Hello, how's it going? What's up, friends? All right, so I just posted that last video about attitudes, and now moving on to a little bit about attitudes and behaviors, and then theory for a minute. So attitudes linked to behaviors. Like I said in the last video, attitudes don't always predict behaviors for a number of reasons, right? There is certainly a relationship between them, right? They are definitely what we call correlated, right? So they talk about in the chapter this idea of correlation, where a certain thing and another thing uh, are related, but not necessarily one causing the other or something like that. So, for an example, correlation is different than causation. Causation would say X causes Y. Let me see. Eating chocolate cake leads people to gain weight. In that example, eating chocolate cake is X, or the independent variable. And as that varies, it affects Y, people's weight gain. So we would say that, yes, eating chocolate cake is a causal effect to gaining weight. That causes the other. Right. A correlation would be something to the effect of two things vary together, but one doesn't necessarily cause the other. So an example could easily be, let's say your just an example, grades in school and extracurricular activities. In other words, studies have shown that students' grades are correlated with the amount of outside class activities they do. In other words, we see often that kids who are in a lot of extracurricular activities have higher grades in a lot of ways, which seems counterintuitive because you would say, if you're so busy and you're doing all these other things, you won't have time for school. But really what they find is, for a number of reasons, those students, and this is what we say, it's not directly caused. It's not that doing the activity inherently makes you smarter or your grades better, right? So we can't say that doing the activities causes your grades to get better. But what we can say is that there's a lot of factors involved that if you're doing more activities, it means you have less free time. When you have less free time, people tend to procrastinate less. Students know, look, I only have these 45 minutes or this hour to do my homework. The rest of my day is full. I have to do it now. Whereas if you said to a student, hey, you get home from school at 3 o'clock, you have all day. It's very easy for that young person to go sit on the couch, play video games, do whatever, say, oh, I'll get to it, not do it. There's that. There also happens to be the fact, look, people who are striving and doing lots of extracurriculars tend to be more motivated. So they're probably more motivated to school. There's all these other factors involved that, it's the fact that doing these extracurriculars leads to this, which then leads to this, which may influence your grades. But it's not like the act of playing tuba makes you a better student in and of itself. If that makes sense. But they go up and down together. And it's not a perfect relationship or a perfect example, but that's just one. So what we find is attitudes and behaviors are highly correlated. So my attitude towards something will most likely lead me to behave in a certain way, but not always. Tons of studies out there throughout the history of the social sciences, psychology, and all that about this thing. But there's a lot of things that affect attitude behaviors. Number one, level of specificity. So if you measure people's attitudes and behaviors with the same amount of detail, that's important, that you're measuring them on the same kind of scale. What the actual action is, what the actual behavior is, right? What the target is, what the context is, time. Those things all affect attitudes, right? Behaviors and what a person believes about a behavior can also influence whether or not they perform it, right? How much control someone perceives to have over their behaviors and their attitudes. All different kinds of things affect this, right? So really that's as deep as I'm going to get for the moment on attitudes and behaviors before we move on here to theory. So theory, what is theory? Why are theories important? A theory is important because it allows us to make predictions, allows us to understand. It's a systematic set of ideas used to describe or explain a phenomena. A phenomena is anything that a person does, any action is a phenomena. So anything, not an object, but like any Any process is a phenomena. If it rains out, you can say that's a phenomena. Something happened. Okay. Turning the lights on, turn on the light switch, that's a phenomena. I turn on, I switch the switch and the lights go on. That was some type of process that occurred. Okay. So any kind of process, anything like that is a phenomenon, right? So being able to explain and understand how and why those things happen is really important in the world for a number of reasons, right? So you can have theories that explain phenomena, right? Helps us explain events, how they occur, why could help us explain why people act the way they do. So if we want a theory of like why are, you know, look, something very, very important, obviously, in society today is school shootings. It's important to know why, what drives a person to, you know, shoot up a school. If we know why, what are the factors influence? What's the process? Well, then hopefully we can stop it. If we don't know why, or we don't find some type of systematic, obviously there's differences. No case is exactly the same. The reason that this person did it versus this person, they're not the same. There's tons of factors, but if we can get to the core of it, maybe they're all different, but at the core, we can say that what really caused it was, this person had mental health and this person had, issues, and this person had access to weapons. And if we can deal with the mental health, then we can deal with access to weapons, whatever the case. I'm not trying to pretend like I know, how to solve everything, but now we can say, okay, let's get at the root of the problem. We can fix it, right? So explaining is important, right? It allows us to predict when things will happen. If we see patterns, we say, oh, this has happened before, this is what's going to happen. Right? It allows us to also kind of sometimes control phenomena, right? It allows us to have some measure of influence over, and in this case, if we're talking about the persuasion process, we can control the persuasion. If we know how persuasion works, if we know why, if we know what factors in the context in which certain type of messages are more persuasive, that's great, right? So a theory, though, it's really important that most good theories explain how or why something happens, not just that it does. So I can say that my theory is when I flip the light switch, the lights will go on. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to happen. I'm going to say, oh yeah, that's a good theory. But what happens when I go and flip on the light switch and it doesn't turn on? There's a million reasons why it may not work. Maybe the power's out, maybe the light's out, maybe one of the filaments in the ceiling has frayed, the wires, who knows? There's a million things. But if I go and turn it on, and the only thing I know is that when I flip on the switch, the light goes on, and it doesn't, and that was all we knew about the theory of light, we wouldn't be able to fix it. We would think, oh, it's broken. What happened? We wouldn't know. But a full theory would explain that when you flip the switch, it turns on, sends an electrical pulse, and this and that charges this, and it sends it to the filament, and this and that. Oh, so now we can go and look at the process and see, okay, well, what part of the process isn't working, so we can fix it. That's very powerful. It's especially powerful when we're talking about any kind of communicative act, especially persuasion. That's what we're talking about. So the next couple chapters, you're going to read about persuasion and theories of persuasion. So get excited and do that. Sorry, also about my settings here. I've been working out of my horrible basement office here with all kinds of stuff and toys, and it's not the nicest room in the house, but it's the only quiet one here over winter break when the kids are home and the wife is home, and I don't go into the office over winter break at school. So this is where we're doing class. All right, have a good holiday if I don't talk to you before Christmas.